Hey y'all, my name is Katelyn Edmundson, and today I'm going to be discussing my drama project as well as my Canva presentation. So for my topic, I chose to do the outcomes for the feminine, and my title, I chose Beyond the Curtain, Women in the Shadow of Tragedy. I chose this topic because I feel like it spoke out to me when compared to some of the other topics that we were going over. I think that this topic spoke to me because I can relate to it on a personal level as a woman, and I can also see it more from a personal point of view instead of just, oh, this is what I'm using for this project, but I can actually see what the women in these plays are going through, as well as how it relates to me and how I feel. So for my thesis, I said, in both Fences and Hamlet, all of the female characters, including Gertrude, Ophelia, and Rose, are deeply affected by the flaws of the male characters, and they show how male dominance, emotional abandonment, and the silencing of women can result in emotional destruction, loss of identity, and forced guarding. These plays place an emphasis on how women suffer from collateral damages when the male character struggles with self-destruction. For example, Ophelia struggles through insanity and death, Gertrude through guilt and complicity, and Rose through emotional abandonment and suppressed emotions. So, for example, in my Canva project, I chose the picture of the woman's mouth with a rope tied through it to signify how she is being completely silenced. I also chose a picture of the woman looking through the broken glass to show how she is trying to see herself when all she sees is the male perspective. And then I chose a lot of images of either women laying in water or women drowning, because a lot of women may feel like, including the women in these plays, may feel like they're drowning under the presence of their male counterpart. And I also chose this because it shows that women are forces of nature, which is why they have the flowers surrounding them in the water, showing that they are one with nature and they are a force of nature. So for my quotes for dialogue, I chose a quote said by Troy in Act 2, Scene 1 of Fences, and it says, "You are a womanless man." And this line exposes Troy's character and the way that he is not capable of understanding his failures in their relationship, which is shown by this impactful dialogue. This is the turning point where Rose fully detaches from Troy emotionally. For my quote on situation, it is said by Rose in Act 2, Scene 1 of Fences, and she says, "You always talking about what you give and what you don't have to give, but you take too." And I chose this quote because when Rose confronts Troy, it fully exposes the emotional situation between the two of them. This situation relates to the theme of emotional instability and the expectations of each gender role within a marriage. And then my next quote I chose for role, and it is said by Rose in Act 2, Scene 3 of Fences, and it says, "She's innocent, and you can't visit the sins of the father upon the child." And I chose this quote because in this quote, Rose is defining her role as a nurturing mother figure. This shows forgiveness and personal integrity and reveals how Rose is developing personally after the betrayal of Troy. And then for my next quote, I chose a quote for theme, and it is said by Rose in Act 2, Scene 1 of Fences, and it says, "I took all my feelings, my wants, my needs, my dreams, and I buried them inside of you." So I chose this quote because it directly speaks to the theme of gender roles, self-destruction, and the love it delivered through this very intimate moment between Rose and Troy. This also shows how Rose sacrificed her personal emotions for Troy, which is also why I chose the image of drowning, because she is drowning in her own personal sacrifice while he is on top of the water. And then my next quote I chose for plot, and it is said by Gertrude in Act 4, Scene 7 of Hamlet. And it says, "Her garments, heavy with their drink, pulled the poor wretch from her melodious sleigh to muddy death." And I chose this quote because it shows the plot, because it motivated her revenge as well as shows the start of a turning point in the play. It works to pivot the narrative and intensifies the character's motivation for revenge and extreme action. So I chose this quote because it shows how Gertrude has fully understood that she is going to take revenge, and she understands what must be done. And then my next quote I chose for role, and I chose a quote from Ophelia in Act 1, Scene 3 of Hamlet, and she said, "I shall obey my lord." I chose this quote because it shows Ophelia's role and duties as a daughter. She's obedient and submissive, and she is very controlled by male figures such as Polonius and Laertes. So for my next quote, I chose a quote for character, and it is said by Hamlet in Act 1, Scene 2 of Hamlet. and it says, "Frailty, thy name is woman." And I chose this quote because this shows Hamlet's character and misogynistic point of view. It shows the theme of emotional gender weakness, and it is delivered by Hamlet showing his grief and anger. And then for my next quote, I chose a quote to go off of tragedy, and it is said by Ophelia in Act 4, Scene 5 of Hamlet. And it says, "You must sing a down, and you call him a downa." And I chose this quote because it shows the unfolding of a tragedy and Ophelia's psychological decline. It also shows how she is going mad and it has emotionally lost her mind. And she is going mad because of everything that she has been through, and it shows how she completely sacrificed her own emotions and went mad due to the tragedy of a male figure. And then my next quote I chose is once again for rural, and it is said by Margaret Clark in the Hudson Review, which is one of my secondary sources. And it says, "By the scene's end, any resistance left in Ophelia had wilted, not for the last time, and she is silenced, as she says, 'I shall obey my lord.'" And I chose this quote because it also directly relates to one of the other quotes that I had said earlier. And I chose this because it shows that Ophelia plays the role of a quiet and obedient daughter, which she is suppressed by the male figure, which at the time was her father. And she has a very passive love interest, as well as the fact that she is never allowed to have her own voice because she is silenced, which is what I have also shown in my Canva presentation, once again, with the image of the woman with her lips with a rope in between them. And then my last quote is about character, and it's from John Lahr, Wheels of Misfortune. And it says, "Rose's affectionate reserve hides deep feelings, which is powerfully unleashed by Maxon's news that he is about to become a father again to another woman. I planted myself inside you and waited to bloom," as she said in the play. And this shows that Rose's emotional sacrifice in the instance where she finds out that Troy has completely betrayed her. It shows that although she does not die, she has to go through extreme emotional trauma based on the decision that a man, Troy, made. And this shows that she may not have died on the outside, but a piece of her died on the inside when she found out that he had gotten another woman pregnant. And then as far as my images go, I chose the image of the lady with the rope through her lips because it shows how women are silenced and she feels like she is tied to a man and her voice cannot be spoken. And then I chose the pictures of Wilson and Hamlet because they're the authors of these two stories. And then I also chose to put a piece of the Hamlet writing in my Canva presentation because I felt like this kind of just showed an example of what I'm reading from. And then I chose the image of the tree because the tree is growing in the dark, and I feel like it shows how women are always in the shadow of their man, but the women still continue to grow, which is why the tree grew in the dark. However, the tree is in the shadow, but the tree is still continuing to grow and have light all around it, as shown in the picture with the bright light behind it. I chose the image of the auditorium because this would show where Shakespeare's play was read and kind of like shows the audience and how they would perceive the play from an outside point of view. And then I chose a lot of pictures of women in nature or women laying in water because it shows that the nature is around them, because in each of these pictures, the women have flowers surrounding them, showing that they are a piece of beauty as well as the flowers are. And then I chose the image of the man and woman holding the skull because from my perspective, I took it as like the man is holding the soul of the woman inside of that skull, which is why she is standing behind him, because she knows that she is not beneath him, but is suppressed by him. And then I chose the picture of the man holding the woman who is laying down, who looks like she could possibly be dying. It is in the top left corner. And I chose that picture because it kind of shows like the man is holding her, but she is also struggling with her own thing. However, the man is holding her, which is why she stays in that position, because he is holding her. Not holding her as like a sense of she is being captured, but holding her in a sense of like he is trying to console her, but he does not understand that the pain that she is going through is caused by him. And then I chose the picture of the woman drowning in the red dress because it shows that while she is drowning, she is still beautiful and she is still her own person, but she is drowning from being suppressed and being behind the presence of a man. And then I chose the image of the hearts laid on the fence because it shows like the women have their hearts lined up and their hearts are completely open for the man. The man just has to choose her and choose how he wishes to handle that heart, could either poke the heart balloon, which would be emotionally damaging the women, or you could choose to keep it and savor it, which would be him treating her properly, treating her right, and letting her have her own voice. And then once again, I chose the picture of the women looking through the broken glass, because a lot of women feel like they are broken once they're with the man, because their emotions and their feelings and their voices have been suppressed so deeply that they feel like they do not have it and they are broken and have lost a piece of them. So in conclusion, I chose to do the topic of women being suppressed by the male voice, and the direct prompt would be the outcomes for the feminine. And once again, my title was Beyond the Curtain, Women in the Shadows of Tragedy. And thank you for listening to my presentation. Bye.